Hello there, and welcome to this little corner of the internet. My name is Melody. Today, I'm going to show you guys the long and arduous process of creating my own Summerween Trickster figurine statuette thing. DIY Halloween decor, basically. So for those that don't know, Gravity Falls was a show that aired on Disney XD, I believe. I forget what year it came out, but essentially twin siblings, Dipper and Mabel, go to stay with their great uncle Stan for the summer in the town of Gravity Falls, Oregon, I think, or Washington, somewhere in the Northwest. And this town has lots of mysteries and crazy spooky stuff going on, and it's this really cool mystery that unravels over 2 seasons. And because the show is set during the summer, but they still wanted to have a Halloween episode, they created Summerween, which it's just Halloween set in the summer. And there's this creature, the Summerween Trickster, that shows up, and he's very lanky and creepy and is all like, "You must trick or treat or die." He's very scary until you realize what he actually is, so I won't spoil that if you haven't seen the episode. But for some reason, when Charles and I were celebrating actual Summerween this past summer, I was like, yeah, I should totally make a Summerween Trickster little statue for our apartment. And I don't know why that was the thought, but that was the thought. Sometimes my brain is just like,
make the thing.
And I'm like, but why though?
You gotta.
So I gave in. I listened and decided to make the thing. Oh boy, did I underestimate how much work it was going to be. So now that I have explained what the Trickster is and the very illogical reason why I decided to make it, I guess I'll just show you that whole hot mess of a process. So to start off, I want to make a skeleton out of wire, and so I have this packaging that our sheets came in, and it has like metal framing. I'm going to cut that out and try to use that for the skeleton, just because I'm hoping it's more pliable than wire hangers, which are my other option. But essentially what I want to do is create a metal skeleton, and then I think I'm going to build up the body with aluminum foil and then paper-maché around that. So hopefully that'll work to create the shape and the body of our trickster, and then we will go from there. After cutting the wire out of the bedsheet packaging, I bent it into the pose I wanted the trickster in. It literally took me about an hour just to do this part, so I didn't film the whole process of bending and cutting the wire. Since the trickster is quite a bit top heavy, I figured posing him kneeling with one knee on the ground would give him a bit more stability. Attaching all the pieces of the metal skeleton was tricky. Hot glue didn't really stick to the metal, so I just had to wrap a lot of aluminum foil tightly around the intersections to keep the metal pieces attached. From there, I added foil spheres at the joints and started building up the limbs and the rest of the body. Next, I paper-machéed the whole body, which was a messy and unpleasant experience. The newspaper just wasn't sticking well to the aluminum, and I really wish I'd had some plaster craft instead. I really didn't need to paper-maché the whole body since I'd be covering up the torso anyway with his jacket, but I just wanted to keep the whole thing consistent. Okay, so the skeleton and the base of our little trickster are done. I think I should have made the hip a little bit more squared off, just like the shoulder is, just because his stance is a little bit kind of wobbly, honestly, but that's okay. I mean, it'll still work, I think. So I think the next thing I'm gonna do is then start on the pants, which I'm just gonna leave as the paper-maché base, just because his limbs are so thin and stick-like. I don't think I'd be able to put fabric over that without like breaking it. So I'm just gonna try painting the pants on and see how that works. And then I'm also gonna try to do his head, which kind of looks like a thumb, I'm not sure how I'm gonna do that. I might try either painting over the paper-maché or creating like a fingertip of like a glove to slide over it, and I don't have purple fabric that's dark enough, but I do have this leftover t-shirt fabric, so I'm gonna try that maybe. And then I also want to start on the clay parts using Sculpey, so that's gonna be his feet and his hands and then the mask as well. So that is what's next. I started with a base coat of acrylic gesso for the pants, which I did not actually get in the frame of this shot, so okay. And while that dried, I went to my sewing machine to create a vaguely thumb-shaped shape for the head. I left it loose so that stuffing could later be added to create the trickster's multiple chins. At this point, the gesso on the pants still wasn't dry, so I moved on to the Sculpey clay, which I also didn't bother to frame correctly. Sorry about that. I knew I wanted his shoes to be clay so that he would have a little more weight to his bottom half, but I also made his hands and his mask out of clay. His hands and mask needed to be very specific sizes and shapes, so I figured the best way to achieve what I wanted was to make them myself from scratch. And even though his hands are supposed to be super long and spindly, I knew this would be really fragile and hard to create in almost any medium at this small size, so I decided not to carve out individual fingers. I then used some leftover metal from the skeleton to put holes in the clay pieces where they would be attached to the body. While I waited for the Sculpey to bake, I attached and stuffed the head sock, I guess we'll call it. To create his multiple chins, I used some sewing thread to pull the fabric tight across the front and create folds. Once the Sculpey was done, I moved on to painting. Painting these stupid clay pieces took so dang long. The paint took a really long time to dry, and the clay needed at least 2 coats, so after painting the trickster's head a darker purple, I spent the next couple of hours going back and forth between painting the clay pieces and painting different patches of the pants. Somewhere between waiting for things to dry, I decided to make a platform for him by gluing together a bunch of popsicle sticks in essentially what looked like a mini boardwalk. I also decided late into the night to add a rock painted like a jack-o'-melon, so I had to get the gesso back out for that. Oh, and I suddenly wasn't sure if I wanted him to be holding a jack-o'-melon or not, so I went back and made another Sculpey hand for him without the watermelon, which I then had to paint as well. I ended up not even using that second hand, so I guess I'll have to make a weird ornament for Christmas or something out of it. I swear sometimes it's like I just enjoy making things harder for myself. But by the end of the night, I finally had all the clay pieces painted, the platform painted, and the pants finished. I painted the platform black with some burnt sienna blended in, which looked quite nicely a little like blood on pavement. To distress the shoes, I added a little bit of black paint with a dry brush. I also added black stitch lines between the patches of the pants, which made it start to look more cartoony and a little bit Burton-esque. I still needed to add faces to the watermelons, but at that point in the night, I was just done. I'm so tired. So all of the sculpting and painting and everything yesterday took somewhere between 7 and 8 hours of work. The big part that I'm going to be doing today, of course, is the jacket and the hat, and then I have some other smaller things to finish up. I'm really hoping that doesn't take as long as yesterday. I think what I didn't anticipate was how long it takes all the paint to dry. So, I mean, at least it's like a really gross, rainy day. So I don't want to go outside, although I do really just want to like curl up and watch a movie. Alas, there was an insignificant craft to complete. I started the day by supergluing the shoes onto the legs, and it was starting to look good. Then it was time to start the jacket. I used a sleeve from this real jacket that I kept for fabric, as well as some old green t-shirt fabric and part of an old maroon bedsheet. Yep, that's 3 completely different fabrics in this mix. I decided to try being smart about this whole thing and used the lining of the sleeve to make a mock-up jacket, from which I made a sort of pattern. Then I cut out the individual pieces of the jacket and pinned them together to be sewn. Once I had 2 front panels and 2 back panels, I sewed the front and back together along the side seams. Because the Trickster is such a weird shape, I determined that I would have to create the left and right sides of the jacket separately and attach them down the middle once they were put on his body. I then took a little break from sewing to finish painting my little jack-o'-melons.
Ah yes, my favorite Halloween colors are poop green, poop purple, poopy brown, and poop. Truly though, this is how you know someone is a villain, when they wear all the poop colors.
Anyway, back to sewing. I began making the sleeves with several different patches of fabric sewn together that I then folded in half and sewed down one side, making them into a kind of tube with a slight flare at one end. I then turned the fabric tubes right side out, but clearly hadn't yet in this image. I feel like some parts of this project I filmed in great detail and other parts I just couldn't be bothered. I don't know.
My spooky baby came out. Hello, Barbara.
Get the out of my room! I'm playing Minecraft!
Because I didn't want to deal with the physics of hemming a tiny jacket, I decided to finish the hem with my hot glue gun. I contemplated hand stitching the sleeves onto the jacket, but ultimately hot glued those as well. I usually don't like using hot glue for projects like this if I can help it, just because if the glue shows, it makes things look super sloppy, but at this point I was just trying to salvage some of my sanity. Then it was time to put the jacket on. This was not too far off from what I imagined trying to dress a toddler must be like. It ended up being tricky on the right side, particularly because of the way the elbow was bent, so I did have to cut open the seam just to slide it over that joint. While I waited for my phone to upload everything I'd filmed earlier onto my laptop, I hot glued the jacket together down the front and back and used stuffing to round out the shape of his body. To keep the stuffing inside, I glued the jacket to the body at a few different points around his waist, and since the jacket was on, I could finally attach his hands with super glue. Finally, it was time to move on to the hat, which I made out of an old manila file folder. I made an oval shape for the brim and a long rectangle for the top portion. What is the top portion of a hat called anyway? I covered the brim of the hat with a thin off-white fabric and made the elongated top portion of the hat out of the same material. I made the band of the hat and the collar of the jacket both out of a heavier off-white material, which I then painted a darker brown and added some dinginess with black paint. By the end of the night, I had most of the Trickster assembled, but I still needed to finish off the collar and paint the hat. Alas, I had been working for 10 hours straight at this point, so I was done for the day.
Oh yeah, and my laptop corrupted all the video files I'd filmed that day, so I thoroughly panicked because I'd already deleted them off my phone to make space and thought I'd lost a whole 10 hours worth of work. Thankfully, rebuilding the iPhoto database brought them back, but I seriously was about to abandon this whole video project. So anyway.
Well, now it's Monday. Did not finish this project on Friday like I had hoped. I seriously worked from 10:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night, like breaking just to make a sandwich and use the restroom. So I got a lot done, but there still are a few things to finish, namely the hat, the collar, and just attaching everything. On paper, those don't sound like a lot of things, but they might take a long time because, as I've learned and stated before, the paint takes freaking forever to dry. So that is definitely gonna draw things out a bit, but I am really hopeful that this will be done today. I need it to be done today because I honestly want to move on to other things. I want to move on to editing this video. So I just had to take the weekend off. There was other real life things to attend to. So now we're back at it. Let's just get it done. I started the day by painting the hat the same poopy brown as the pants so that it would have the maximum amount of time to dry. Then I decided to paint each of the seams of the jacket with a thin black line and draw on stitching. This worked wonderfully to disguise some of the hot glue that was showing through, and it also made the thing look more cohesive and cartoon-like, just like with the pants. Then I attached the band to the hat and attached the collar, stuffed the top of the hat and glued it into its bent shape, and attached the hat and the mask to his head, and finally I glued him in place on his platform and left him overnight to dry. It is finished! He is done. He is finally freaking done. And I'm a little underwhelmed. I mean, I'm happy with how it turned out. I think just after so many hours being poured into this, I'm just like, okay, I'm done. Overall though, I am happy with how this turned out. So I think my biggest mistake was, like I said earlier, not squaring off the hips and just making them come to a point, because that makes him a little less stable structurally. I mean, he's standing on his own right now, just being glued to this little platform, so it's working. He's just pretty precarious. Other things that I would do differently are mostly nitpicky things, like I think I made his head a little too big and then I didn't round off the collar. Like in the pictures after I made the collar, I realized, oh, it's actually more rounded than pointy, but like I said, they're nitpicky things. I'm glad that I used real fabric for the jacket and then added the black seams, because I think that looks really cool and makes him look more like a cartoon. I think the Sculpey worked out really well for certain elements, so I'm gonna try not to be too nitpicky and just be content with this as it is. Now I gotta find a home for this guy, because we don't have a lot of decorating space. I was also able to use all stuff that I already had in the house, so I didn't have to go out and buy anything. That was really nice. And like I said, overall I am happy with how it turned out. I think I am just a little underwhelmed because it was so much time, and now I'm just kind of like, well, it's done. So I did not expect that to take as long as it did. I really wanted to have this video up by Saturday the 17th. Clearly that did not happen. I don't even know when I'm gonna get this posted. So this was a process. I'm very exhausted, but it does feel good to make something again. I don't think I've made anything this intense in a very long time. It does feel good to just create something. So there's that. But I'm just rambling at this point, so I will wrap up. Hope you guys are doing well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Hi, this is Editing Melody because Video Melody was a dum-dum who forgot to say, please leave a like or comment or subscribe to this channel and all those other semi-insincere things that we feel the need to say. More sincerely though, if you have an Instagram account and would like to follow me over there, you can find me at Outfit Repeater, spelled with a 0. As much as I enjoy making videos, it is a lot easier to share smaller projects and outfits throughout the week on Instagram, and just things that don't really warrant a full video, so do go check that out if you're interested. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video and watched all the way through, here are 10 fake internet points for you, and you can take that to the bank. And they'll probably tell you, sorry, you can't deposit that here, have a nice day. See ya.